Welcome to the Night Shift Podcast. Jeff Sharon here. We've got Andrew Glukov to start out. Bryson Turner is also joining us from campus, not from his normal stomping grounds. He's in like the old RTV hallway where I've been many a times, and Drew is not, and he's bitter about it apparently. I don't know. But yeah, we got a loaded show here all of a sudden. So sorry we're a little bit late getting this out. We actually had to record this in stages because we had a bunch of stuff go down between Tuesday the 11th and Wednesday the 12th. This first segment we're recording is on Wednesday the 12th. Everything else was recorded yesterday. But we just want to update you on a few big stories that have broken out. We're going to talk baseball. We're going to talk softball. Spring game is coming up on Friday night. We're going to be talking about that. Kyle's going to join me and Drew about that. And then also Nick Porcelli joining later on to update us on XFL, USFL. Bryson's going to be with us throughout the, in segment 3 as well to update us on tennis. But we have to start with some breaking news from Wednesday morning, and it has to do with rowing. Becky Cramer, the head coach of UCF Rowing, has resigned. She's been at UCF since 2008, 2009. She spent 2 decades at UCF. As a member of the coaching staff. Prior to that, she was an assistant. She resigns having won 5 AAC championships, 5 straight from 2015 to 2019. A remarkable stretch of success. All Americans, all conference performers, all over the place, but she resigns rather quietly. Bryson Turner, I want you to kind of set the stage for what's been going on here. By the way, taking over for her will be Montia Rice, who was the interim, who is officially, according to a release from UCF, listed as an interim head coach. And will now take over full time. Although athletic director Terry Mahajer said in the release on UCFKnights.com that UCF will initiate a national search for our next head coach at the conclusion of spring competition. Bryson, give us the lay of the land here. What precipitated this, from what you can tell?
So if we all can remember, back on February 21st, friend of the show, Trey Strolko from Sons of UCF, posted a tweet where he said that he had reached out to a UCF Athletics SID, and he said that Becky Cramer was on a leave of absence. I'm quoting the tweet there, and it's on his Twitter. It's still there. So that means that Cramer has actually been away from the team since February, since way before the rowing season began this year in 2023. So Montia and I actually attended the first rowing meet, the senior day rowing meet, where at Lake Pickett, and Montia Rice was just serving as kind of the interim head coach already. So this head coaching thing has been going on for longer than this. So the way that I am seeing this right now is that it sounds like something has gone on behind the scenes that we do not know about, unfortunately. So who knows if we will, considering now that Becky Cramer has quietly resigned. But now, basically, where that leaves us now is a rowing program that has now lost their head coach. And I remember at the Oviedo Charge On Tour event, Becky Cramer was there. And she talked about how she was having so many athletes return, but now those athletes are returned to a team without their head coach. And after this Big Ten invite where they didn't get a win, I mean, you have to kind of beg the question of how this coaching change will affect the team, throughout this season. So it'll be interesting to see how this final, American year with rowing will be without the head coach that has been around for a very long time, but. Yeah. Because with Terry initiating a national search, that does mean that I would say a pretty high profile rowing job that is now moving to the Big 12 is now going to become open. So I think that it will be very interesting to see who they will bring in for that.
Yeah, the Big 12 is pretty competitive in rowing, as we've known, and they have a few affiliate members, interestingly enough. in Alabama and Tennessee, in addition to Kansas State, Oklahoma, Texas at the moment at least, and West Virginia. So it's a little bit. It's not like men's soccer where rowing competes in an entirely different conference, but it is a little bit of a mishmash, a little bit more of a mishmash than usual. So as of right now, the information, like I said, UCF's been pretty quiet about this. The information is pretty sketchy. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, like, we just don't have much to go on. But the resignation of Becky Cramer is some pretty significant news that we wanted to pass along to you early here on this Wednesday, April 12th. It's a bummer to see Becky hanging up, but she's done a lot of things for a lot of athletes and has been a real trooper for UCF over the years and a great member of the UCF community. And I don't know what's going to happen next for her, but we certainly appreciate all that she's done for us. She's come on our show many times, and we're gonna miss her. We're gonna miss her a lot. So,
she says in the press release that she is that quote, "I am stepping away to spend more time with my family." So that I'm certain that'll be nice for her to do that. And of course, that leaves Todd Dagenais as the only UCF head coach that from that specific era, unless alongside Coach Gooch as well with the cheer squad.
Yeah, longest tenured, right? I think Coach Linda Gooch and then Todd Dagenais. So, all right. So as we hear more, we will bring it to you on this podcast and, of course, at blackandgoldbanneret.com if we hear anything more on the resignation of Becky Cramer from UCF Rowing. All right, let's get Drew in here because we got to talk about what's going on with baseball here. So let's get, first of all, update you. We're leading off with, leading off. Well, we're not really leading off with baseball. It's second. But UCF got a win over Stetson last night, 7-1 in DeLand to get to 18-15 on the year. But more or less, the situation for UCF baseball looks like this. That win stopped the bleeding, at least temporarily, in a moment, Bryson and Drew, where this team had lost 11 of their last 13 since the Dartmouth sweep back on March 19th. Their only wins, they had one against Maryland, they had one against South Florida. They got swept by number 12 ECU in Greenville prior to the Easter weekend, and Bryson has a recap on blackandgoldbanneret.com. The win against Stetson does stop the bleeding before a home series against Memphis starting this Friday, going Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But that was at least only part of the news. And Bryson, I want to bring you in here on this one. There have been some stuff swirling around the UCF baseball program recently, and if you can just kind of update us on what's going on. We have some sound also from Greg Lovelady as well, but I want you to tell us like what's been going on, because you've been following this pretty quickly, and you wrote up some of it on your most recent recap. What's going on with UCF baseball right now?
So the big thing with UCF baseball at the moment is that they are currently experiencing, while the home run hitting has been particularly good through the course of this season, everything else has just not really been able to go with it. I want to harken back to the 2010 team, the days of Chris Duffy. Mm-hmm. That during that season, that was the single season team home run record with 78. By this point in the year, roughly, but at the time I wrote my recap, it was before the Stetson game, so it's changed a little bit now, but basically, this team is very much outpacing the 2010 team in terms of home runs. But just like the 2010 team, the pitching ERA is not there. This is the highest ERA that UCF has had since 2010. So the fact that the pitching isn't holding up, of course, also the defense. UCF over 30% of UCF's games this season alone have been multi-error. That doesn't mean one error, multiple errors, two or more. Mm-hmm. In 30% of UCF's games this season as of before the Stetson game. So, of course, defense has been a general issue with Greg Lovelady throughout his career. And, of course, you have true freshmen also on the team, and, you can't expect them to be perfect. But those mistakes pile up. And with UCF also just being so reliant that they've been with the long ball this entire year, not being able to manufacture runs as well as they've normally been. If they can't hit home runs, then they're not exactly in very good straits at the time. Now, obviously, this recent stretch against Miami and East Carolina, the only softening to this I could really give to this is that they're both very highly ranked, both of them. So losing those 4 games, to be honest, is something that I didn't want, but you wouldn't be surprised that they did. So they did have a chance to beat ECU on Sunday, but that one went into extra innings and a rain delay, and that one was definitely one that got away a little bit there. But it is what it is. Stetson, the bleeding is, at least for the moment, halted. I mean, Stetson is ranked number 193 in RPI, so it's something you kind of had to win, but it's definitely not like the Band-Aid isn't, let's put it this way, it's bleeding through. It's a Band-Aid, but the blood is bleeding through, if you want to give my little thing. So I think this weekend against Memphis, you want to be able to continue that momentum forward in order to really show that you have turned around from that skid that we've been on recently.
Coexistent to that is some news that once again we got to give some credit to Trace Trocco here because he has been in following this story. There have been some accusations that have come down about some funny business having to do with bats, and maybe that had a little something to do with a little bit of a power outage of late for UCF baseball. Now, again, information is pretty sketchy, but Trace came out with some information that said that there was an internal investigation going on. Now, you will recall last year in the series against Memphis, but from what we understand, it has to do with the bat certification process prior to games. You'll recall last year in the Memphis game, remember that, Bryson and Drew? There was that controversy about I think it had to do with pine tar on bats.
I believe you're correct.
Yeah, and whether or not a bat was properly certified, that resulted in an ejection in one game. It was pretty, we actually did a breakdown of this whole thing last year. I actually did a video breakdown, but according to Trace on his Twitter account, Pez for Seinfeld and Pez, because that's what Trace likes. This is from Trace Trocco. Internal investigation. UCF baseball head coach Greg Lovelady comments on a former player's allegations that earlier this season the Knights used bats that had been altered. And I have a clip of Greg Lovelady. Again, this is from Trace. Let's go ahead and hear from Greg.
Yeah, I mean, we just, again, there's some things that you can control and some things that you can't control. And so, we just handled everything internally and things that we feel like we need to do better at. And some things that, you just have no control over what other people say, whether they be true or not true. And the things that you feel like you need to address internally, then we address them and make sure that those things don't happen, and the things that we don't need to address, then we don't obviously address them. And so, unfortunate, but just part of it, part of the process. So just handle our things and then go on and try to handle the next day the best we can.
All right. Well, we didn't really get too much from there, obviously, but this is now. Let's be clear: the whole bat certification process, and we've been over this before on the show, has been an issue throughout college baseball. I think last year was Tennessee had an issue in the game
now with the dead bats.
Yeah. And by the way, scoring and power hitting has been up in college baseball of late. But I think if you look at this, like, it kind of doesn't look good when you have Drew, when you have like an internal investigation into this, into an accusation, plus, a rough losing streak. well, now they've won 12 of their last 14, or lost 12 of their last 14. But what's going on? How worried should we be right now, Drew, do you think?
Well, based on the scuttle that we've heard, which is bits and pieces, UCF has not fully come out with anything formal yet. They're bound to at some point. There's too much smoke going on. You look at the Dartmouth series. That was really the kind of breaking point, the before and the after, and you see a major shift. And I think a lot of that has to do mentally. With this stuff came out, and you had a player who was on the team when the season started is no longer on the team. He was kind of disgruntled. That weighed on the players mentally. And if you're not mentally 100% there, your play is going to be affected. And I think that's part of what's happened. And I think it's actually the players' best interest, and maybe even the program in general, to get the information out there. And the only reason why is take a little bit of weight off the players' shoulders, because most of these guys probably had nothing to do with any of this stuff. It was probably very isolated, but this is something that we're seeing a lot of teams dealing with because of we're kind of in almost a dead bad era in college baseball. So I always joke, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. And it's only cheating.
It seems like a very baseball thing.
It's a very baseball thing. The concept of the idea of bats being altered is not new in baseball. In fact, it's probably more common than you think. The difference is UCF had a disgruntled former player who squealed. Most programs aren't going to have a player squeal about it. But in the case of, I don't want to say mental health, but in the mental well-being of the players, it's probably better to just get this stuff out in the open. But especially in pitching, if you're mentally not 100% there, man, they're going to walk all over you. So I think that's where it comes down to. It's more in the head than anywhere else now.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts right now because, again, this is a former player, okay, who's not on the team anymore. So of that.
But he was on the team earlier this year.
Yeah, but make of that what you will, right? It's something that I think, like we said, like we know baseball. Sometimes issues like this can be blown way further out of proportion than it actually is. But I'm not saying it looks good. It doesn't. But I'm just saying it's like funny business with bats. I mean, obviously, if there's an issue, somebody's out. Like in the course of a game, if they discover an improper bat or whatever. Bryson, I want to get you in because you wanted to respond to something that Drew said, right?
Yes. So you mentioned how UCF needs to get something out there, but let's put it this way: the way that this came out does not make UCF look good, because even though obviously like you said, it's a systemic thing happening throughout college baseball, it's still something where it's like everyone is sort of like kind of knows they're doing it, but they don't say it because otherwise it's gonna make them look bad. And unfortunately, not only has the UCF been on that losing streak, but now you have this clip now of Lovely sort of tap dancing around allegations that ended up being and now people are like, wait, are you breaking? Like, are you like being shifty? And people, don't trust that. And when you're losing, you want to point fingers. And when you point fingers at like, hey, he's being shifty. Why is he being shifty? So
you kind of mentioned it, like who's been squawking on social media the most? USF people, ECU people, and Clemson people.
Clemson
interestingly
fans,
enough,
what heard about the sweep? UCF and ECU, USF and ECU. Enough said. They UCF and them have always been at odds.
Need we say more?
Need we say more?
Yeah.
But in the case of ECU, they're actually really good.
They are.
They're number 12. They're a top ranked team. They're really good. But
but there's no love lost there. Okay, let's just be clear.
Not in the slightest bit.
Well, you know what the most effective way of saving a situation like this is?
Win.
And they have 3 games against Memphis coming up. Right now, UCF is 1-5 in conference, all alone at the bottom. Not a great start, but like we said, stopped the bleeding on Tuesday, and now they have the only team, the team that's directly ahead of them at 2-4 in the conference, in the Memphis Tigers at home. Memphis is 18-16.
I disagree with you though.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Normally winning cures all, but when you're talking about something that's damaging the integrity of the game, winning does not cure it until you explain it.
Well,
you have to clear the air and say, oh, this was, this issue was taken care of after the Dartmouth series or whatever. But you have to clear the air. Just winning the game is when the integrity is in question will not solve the problem.
All right, but here's the thing though too, Drew, is all we have right now is an accusation from a former player. No UCF players have even been called out for using an illegal bat in any game this season.
Because of the Lovelady interview and how his nonverbal responses kind of played in that.
You're playing the body language doctor here.
Well, that's the thing. There's smoke there. You have to address the smoke, and because illegal bats is an integrity of the game issue because it alters the game itself. It's not like someone wasn't going to class when they should have been and forged some attendance documents that we've seen back 20 years ago. That's.
You had to rip open that scab, didn't
absolutely. You? It's the 20-year anniversary.
My sense of it was he was trying to, and he was talking to Trace, and Trace has been, talking to Greg as he's been here, right, along with us. And he was trying to be, and Greg likes to be forthcoming, but all of a sudden he has to be not forthcoming. And it's hard to kind of talk around an internal investigation without, while being transparent, but also opaque at the same time. So,
but
I think he deserves the benefit of the doubt here. Now, what it does do, I think, is there may be some rather powerful microscopes on UCF this coming weekend in this conference series, since this has all gone down. So, and remember, unless we forget, the last bat controversy associated with UCF was against Memphis last year in Tennessee. So funny how everything comes full circle like that. So I don't know what's going to happen. All I know is that we got Friday, Saturday, Sunday against the Tigers. And Bryson, you said Cam Leiter had a great start against Stetson on Tuesday night.
Hopefully that's a turnaround for him because while the freshman has been a talent this season, getting plenty of strikeouts, he's always been having a little bit of issues with his command. But last night he only allowed the one walk and struck out 7 batters, made it 6 innings. So obviously it's Stetson, but I think this could provide could potentially provide a good flip of the switch for him because he was originally in the starting rotation, but because of the command stuff, he was put in the bullpen now he's starting midweeks. So this could be a very good step in his development and could be a very good contribution for the pitching staff moving forward.
Well, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying that perhaps the mental aspect could be playing a role. Cam Leiter is young. Has he handled something like this before? Probably not. That could have an effect on especially younger players, throughout that winning drought in the season. But just to put to Bona, I do want to highlight 2 real quick things on the whole Lovelady thing. He did mention there was an internal investigation. He did mention that there were actions taken. That he did, and
they kept it in house, which he doesn't, and he's protecting his players in that respect.
That's his job,
which a coach should do, right?
That's his job. You don't have to name names, but the fact that he put that out there shows that UCF's going to eventually have to say something. But we know the truth that something happened, actions were done, but there's still questions to be answered.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll get a few of them answered this coming weekend against Memphis, but this becomes a pretty some interesting subtext to the series coming up. All right, we got to talk about softball. Elo, unfortunately, is not here this week in order to give us updates, but we can do that. Obviously, no weekend series for UCF softball because this is that sort of bye week that they had. But on Wednesday, UCF beat Florida Gulf Coast 7-2 in Fort Myers, and then came back home and run ruled FIU on Tuesday, April the 11th. 9-1 in 5 innings. And just a quick little peek, Bryson Turner, at the RPI. I wanted to see where, we talked about how, UCF has kind of been trying to move up that RPI, and their schedule has actually helped them maintain a pretty good spot. Right now, they're at 34th, and that's with a series at Tulsa coming up this weekend. Now, Tulsa, as Eric has often said to us, is a notoriously difficult place to play. The wind is always a problem out there. And just weird stuff happens. Eric likes to call that place a bandbox. I don't know where that term comes from, but okay, we'll go with it. But UCF softball, at least at the moment right now, 25-18, 4-2 in the league. And, this is another chance to kind of put another dent in Wichita State's lead in the conference, because UCF right now is in fourth place. But again, they've only played 6 games in conference so far. Wichita State has played 9, and they're at 34-7, by the way. South Florida, by the way, 6-3. They're in third. Houston's in second at 5-1. So the schedule obviously hasn't evened out yet, Bryson. But what's the outlook right now for UCF? Because Tulsa 16-21, 2-4. If you're able to, playing out there is tough, but if you can take 3 on the road, like those are 3 huge cards to have in your hand, regardless of how good Tulsa is. That's still a tough place to play.
Oh, for sure. I think the big thing that can help here is that FGCU game is a major indication, I think, of where this team is right now, because they went and beat them 7-2. FGCU, from what I have them right now, they're ranked 41 in the RPI. So they are a top. They're definitely up there among the better softball teams out there. FIU is further down the list, but they took care of business against them with Shannon Doherty getting that beauty of a home run right after she got that order of Pegasus. So, but I think this bye week really allows the team to turn the page now on a first half of the season that really saw them kind of figuring themselves out, mainly from a pitching perspective. Now that we've, Grace Jewell, for instance, in that FGCU game went 5.2 innings, 4 hits, only allowed the 1 run. So I think we see a pitching staff that is much more well seasoned, much more experienced, and thus they can take that with them to the conference play and be able to learn from the mistakes they made before, so they won't make them again. So Grace Jewell and Sarah Willis now are at a point where they're much more capable than they were, and now they can use that to take them through conference play going forward. And it's all really about just kind of grinding their way back to the top to more than likely take on Wichita State again. The fact you played Wichita, I think honestly, it was a bad luck of the draw that UCF got stuck with Wichita State to start conference play to begin with, because when you start conference play with basically your main rival for the conference title, let's face it, is not exactly the best place to be, because you could have players that are still trying to get into their groove, as we saw. So now it's just about a comeback game for this one. For this one, so I think they're in a good position to do that. So we'll see how it ends up going. But I think the momentum is positive, especially after these last 2 games against FGCU and FIU.
By the way, Wichita State last week knocked off number 2 Oklahoma State 8-7. I mean, that's a huge win for their RPI. They're obviously the top AAC team in the RPI at 24, 1 spot behind Florida. UCF, interestingly, 4th in the conference in the standings, win-loss standings, 2nd in the conference in RPI, 10 spots behind Wichita. So that strong schedule early in the year, like you said, Bryson, is kind of helping UCF stay right there as they move forward. So again, but Tulsa's ranked, I think 124th is from what I saw in the most recent rankings. So you got to handle them. Otherwise, you're going to be. Otherwise, you might be in a little bit of trouble.
Margin for error is thin.
Yeah, it is. And especially when you got South Florida coming in next weekend at home as well. So you want to be able to, pull that, if UCF can get to, let's see, if they sweep Tulsa, let's say they pull that off, they would be 7-2, which would put them effectively one game back of Wichita State in the standings through 9. Now, Wichita State obviously has the advantage of having 3 games in hand on UCF right now, or I should say 1 game in hand head-to-head, but because they beat UCF 2 out of 3. But this is going to be a race down to the end. So you gotta, you're a little there. The Knights are a little bit behind, but it's not a devastating situation. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, Drew will stick with us, and Kyle will be here. We're going to preview the UCF Football Spring Game. What are we going to see? I mean, it's a spring game, but Friday night, okay, under the lights, it's Knights versus Nauts. It's also cool. Drew is going to talk about the uniforms and the helmets, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. You're going to get a little preview of that, especially the helmet. I actually like the helmets, but that's where I will leave it right now. Drew, the professional, actually handled all that stuff. And a little bit later, Nick Porcelli will join me and Bryson as well to talk about some other goings-on at UCF. Stick around. The Night Shift podcast will be back in just a moment. All right, let's welcome back to the Night Shift podcast. Jeff here along with Kyle and Drew. I almost slipped it that time, Drew. I almost did. You said I would, and I almost did, but I saved it at the very last minute. We're here to talk a little football now, and UCF's spring football game is upon us. Friday night, 7:30 Eastern time at FBC Mortgage Stadium. A little branding happening up in here. It will officially be the Knights versus the Citronauts. Parking opens early that day. The gates open at 6 for the Raw Tower, 6:30 for everywhere else. It's a nice little diversion on a Friday night, right? Nice little night out. It will take the edge off. I love having this game in the evening. It's been the stuff of legends. How much many of us have been air fried on Saturday afternoons. It's at the stadium, for spring football games. With it being hot out and all that. So I love doing this under the lights. I love the Knights versus Nauts thing. I think that's pretty cool. But there's some on-field stuff that we have to actually discuss in the meantime. So Kyle and Drew, and Kyle, I want to start with you. Mm-hmm. This is kind of a rhetorical question sometimes, I guess, but whatever, we'll ask it anyway. What are you looking to see from the team in a spring game like this? Given new offensive coordinator, John Rice Plumlee pulling double time between baseball and football, still managing to pull that off as far as we know. Other quarterbacks who might be in the mix as well, since, obviously this is his last year of eligibility in Plumlee. Mm-hmm. What do you want to see?
So, first of all, this is the point, since Elo isn't currently here at the moment. Oh, John Rice Plumlee will never make it on time. He's not going to play, whatever. But
that was an accurate impersonation. That was
wow. You sound just like him.
Well,
carry on.
With that in mind, the reason why I lead with that was not just to make light of our good friend Eric Lopez, but rather to explain, even if he's not, I think that's a good thing, and it's giving us the fans or the analysts, or whoever you want, that thing you can actually get out of the spring game. Yeah, I know, spring game doesn't matter, blah, 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 blah. However, what we did ascertain from last year's spring game that held true throughout the season and was 100% accurate, or one of the things I should say, is Thomas Castellanos. What we're going to most be looking for, gentlemen, is does he still look like, can he handle bright lights without being forced to stare like a deer, right? That's what we're trying to see. As he gotten used to speed? Is he up to speed? Is he confident? Is he more than just a freshman, trying to break in to the new program? That's kind of the biggest thing I want to see there. And listen, call me biased, but I also want to see how this new offensive line gels. Lokahe Paoli is still there. He's the new veteran, the statesman of the group. It's not every day that, you see a 6-year guy walk out the door, and see, but I want to see how that group is gelling together. There's just a bunch of transfers to rebuild the line, and rightly so, because they're trying to upgrade to air quotes Power 5 caliber And as much as people want to tell you that it's not all size with the O-line, that technique is important too, which is absolutely true. But nonetheless, they needed to upgrade in size and various other things, and it'll be interesting to see those groups. Will we see another spring game where they're giving up double-digit sacks like last year? So, a lot of those little things are what I'm going to be looking for. Let's see how much the defense is gelling with all the changes that have happened there. There's basically only a couple statesmen, once again, there due to guys transferring. So those are really kind of high level the things I'll be looking at.
Drew, they're not going to put, a lot of stuff on tape here. I mean, for fairly obvious reasons. What about you? What do you want to see here?
Well, I'm with Kyle. I want to see how this offensive line gels. This was a much maligned group last year, and you have some carryovers like Apalule. You had Tyler Grable, who transferred last year, and he struggled a bit. See if another year kind of helps him out. And then you have Edward Collins, who feels like he's been here forever.
Yeah.
He's one of the elder statesmen on this team now, and is probably going to play a very heavy role. I know a lot of people are calling for Paul Rubelt to finally break in. I know he was in the second unit last year. Well,
he also played a little bit of tight end on goal line situations too last year.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's so big. He's 6'10". I mean, if he's got the hands, that's a really good target.
That's a large human.
So I'm really interested to see how this group kind of adapts. Losing Matt Lee to the transfer portal last year really hurt.
Yes,
that's a really big shot right there. So center is definitely something of interest. I know Paulule has been working there because as we know, the center is the leader of the offensive line, and he's a leader. So if you don't have someone else who can fill that role, he's going to have to slide over, which I think will help him as far as versatility when he looks to go to the next level next year.
Right.
The other area I want to see is actually special teams. We have a new long snapper. Alex Ford's been a staple for years.
Good point, Drew.
I want to see how this new group adapts, because someone's going to have to step in, and people, who cares about the long snapper? Well, I was a long snapper. Shut up.
I knew that was coming.
You'll care if McCormick has trouble kicking, right? You'll care if something gets fumbled on the punt there,
A good snap is the difference between a bad hold and a good hold. If you don't get in the right place, things happen. And
no one cares about long snappers until you do.
Exactly. So special teams is definitely a thing. Obviously, we saw that Colton Boomer was early in spring practice, was in a boot. I want to see how some of these other guys fit in as far as being able to cause some competition. I think special teams is vastly underrated. And the last area I want to see is, and he talked about Thomas Castellanos. I want to see Timmy McClain.
Yeah, definitely.
You got the southpaw, coming in there, changing things up. But remember, he's got experience from his time at USF, and he's been working with the scout team all year since transferring over. He missed the window, so he's a redshirt sophomore. So he's got a lot of time too, just like Castellanos does. So I want to see how he does as well, because you're going to see some stiff competition for that quarterback spot.
Oh, and let's not even pretend I doubt they have any illusions that they're going to be the starter, Drew, but you and I both know healthy John Rice Plumlee is a thing that UCF fans can be confident in. Healthy John Rice Plumlee, though, I don't know lasts an entire season in a Power 5 world. Ergo, these guys, super important, right? For the NFL comp, think, Lamar Demetrius Jackson and Ty Huntley, or Michael Vick and Matt Schaub. That backup spot is going to be essential if you want the Knights to make it to a bowl game this year.
Absolutely, and they got work to do. That defensive backfield, they have work to do. It's good to see some players like Jarvis Ware back for another year. He missed a couple seasons ago. You're seeing the Henderson brothers who started to show some things at the end of last season when they had to slide in during the bowl game. Now it's their time. So you're going to see some of these youngsters step up along with some of these older guys like Jarvis Ware. And I'm really interested to see how they gel. Nikkei Martinez, he's got to play that flex spot that Hodges played last season before he got in some hot water. And let go from the team. So even though he's played it, he's never been the guy. And that's probably the hardest spot in the defensive backfield is that night flex position between linebacker and defensive back. That's probably the last guy I'm really interested in seeing how he adapts to it. And who's the guy they're going to bring behind him?
Let me ask you about the new coordinator setup here. Obviously this is going to be Darren Hinshaw's first live action as, obviously offensive coordinator, although co-offensive coordinator with Herb Hand, to be fair. Right. Same thing with Addison Williams. And alongside him is going to be David Gibbs. Are we going to be able to glean anything from those guys in this setting?
I wouldn't say so. Per se, maybe some tendencies with, maybe using a particular guy or a particular formation more than somebody else might have. But if you're looking for, this is totally.
Look at the run pass ratio is totally different now.
I think technique is going to be where you see it. Look at their technique, their footwork. I think that's where you'll see their effect.
Okay,
that's interesting. Yeah.
Skill positions. No Bowser, but we have RJ Harvey coming back.
Running back rooms are a tradition here at UCF, man, and they still got a good one. If you're going to be concerned about anything on the offense, it's the beef, right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Well, you're talking to a guy who's concerned about literally everything on a daily basis.
Those offensive positions are stacked, absolutely stacked. That's the one area you shouldn't have to worry about is the offensive skill position. I mean, wide receiver, stacked. Running back, stacked. Tight end.
I was going to ask how you felt about the receiver core, actually, Drew. Yeah. Like, take me through that a little bit.
Okay, well, let's take it back. So obviously you have the two holdovers, Javon Baker, Kobe Hudson, your number 1, number 2. Obviously numbered number 1, number 2. Now you have number 3, literally. Xavier Townsend, who had a pretty good freshman year. I mean, he showed a lot of flashes of stuff that they used Ryan O'Keefe for. A lot of speed, was learning more field awareness during his freshman year. Well, now it's his sophomore year. Baker and Hudson, both seniors. So obviously this will be their grand finale. Coming back, Amari Johnson this last year because of injury. Yeah. He's back.
That's right.
Not to be forgotten. You have Trent Whitmore, who aside from being a legacy to the program, has looked pretty good in some of the video clips that we've seen from spring practice. As you know, not much gets out as far as video of what's going on. So, you kind of take what you can get. But he's the transfer from Florida. I think he's going to be a serviceable guy. And then you got, receivers like Jalen Griffin, who's come in kind of in the second unit and has been able to make plays on occasion. This is a good wide receiver group. From the probably the 1.5 unit level. I need to see what the next guys can do. Deontay Marks, we've seen him here and there, but never really breaking through. Quan Lee, redshirt freshman now, really interested to see what he can do now that he's not going to be held on the bench. I'm excited about this group. They're talented.
Well, and you're talking about special teams. Who would be returning kicks, Drew, you think?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, you still got Johnny Richardson who's done it before.
Yeah.
I would look at him as probably your best bet because having a small guy with wheels is actually a good thing because you can squeeze through some small areas.
Townsend, I think, also is going to be in the mix for that.
That would be my bet. Yeah.
I would put Townsend on the punt returns, which is what he did do last year. So obviously you don't want to, you want to split it out a little bit. Just you don't overwork anyone. But I like Townsend on the punt returns, and I think as he continues to build field awareness, he'll get even better. Richardson's just a burner, and you want that guy who has that straight north to south speed. That you get a running start, watch out if you get that blocking. But look who's in that running back group. If he returns kicks and he's got to set out a couple plays. Oh, no, DeMarcus Bowman gets to come in. Oh, the horror. This is a really good running back. You got R.J. Harvey, who is an absolute freak. DeMarcus Bowman is a 5-star transfer. Jordan McDonald is an absolute truck. I think he's going to play the Isaiah Bowser role. 6'1", 220. I mean, he's a tank. This is a really good running back group. It's not a huge group. The running backs group only has like 6 guys on the roster right now. It's not big.
Only 6.
But they are big in size. I mean, these guys can hit. And I have every confidence that this crew is going to do a lot of damage.
Okay. All right, 7:30 start for the game. If I had to guess, based on previous experience, it's probably going to go about 2 hours. You get to the second half, probably have a running clock. We'll see some. I think the coaches and the players will pull out a few wrinkles out there to get the crowd going a little bit here. Let me ask you guys this: what kind of crowd do you think we might see for this? I'll start with you, Kyle.
Oh God, I really don't know what to make of that, honestly, because it's so different from what it's been in the past. Granted, it's not been trying to put a game on Thursday like they did up in Gainesville there, but it's nothing quite that obnoxious. But I'll say this: there's something to be said. I said it. Thursday night spring games are obnoxious. Florida, get right. Anyway,
they don't care.
I know they don't. But no, but the long and the short is, I mean, to your point, the spring game is like an escapade, but yet it's only for the real diehards that really go. But that being said, many times Coach Malzahn has said that this is meant to be a fan-friendly event. They're going to be even more fan-friendly. I'm wondering what the air quotes gimmick's going to be for this one, right? Remember when he first came in, that was the Twitter handle on the nameplate. Next year they did the RC code or
QR code.
QR code.
Thank you. I always get that wrong. Yeah, they did the QR code on the back. See, I knew you'd correct me if I said that, so we're perfect.
Yeah, I remember it well. But anyway, carry on.
At any rate, the QR code was was the gimmick for that. So what it's going to be for this year, I have no idea.
Citronaut.
Well, that's on the helmet already. So, but
well, they did reveal that the helmet's true. That has the Citronaut for the Citronauts team. There's a Citronaut script on one side. There's the little Citronaut.
Face.
What's that guy called?
They call him Squeezer, which
is that really his name?
I mean, that's something like
the little face.
That sounds like something you hear out of Syracuse.
The little guy. No, that's Otto. But one of these days we will have an Otto versus
for the record
down at some point.
But you went to Syracuse for your master's, hence the little dig.
I'm fine with it. I embrace the kookiness of it. I mean, what can I say? But thoughts on the Citronaut helmet, Drew?
Well, I am not a fan of having different things on each side. I'm not a fan of that. I don't like it with the Script Knights. I know it's a baseball logo and it is not level, but you know what? It's a baseball logo. That's normal for baseball logos to not be level. But you know what? Make it work, because it doesn't work for me. I want to see the squeezer head on both sides. That's what I want to see.
Fair.
You always put block UCF on both sides. Do both. If you have the knight head on one side, put the knight head on the other side. I think to me it looks cheap. It's like, I didn't want to buy a second set of decals. I'm going to recycle some UCF ones that I already had. Or in this case, I'm just going to throw Citronauts on the side. I know it's a spring game, so it doesn't matter as much. But I've never been a fan of having different logos, or in the case of the Pittsburgh Steelers, only one. I want to see symmetry. That's what it's about. It's about symmetry. Our uniforms outside of the helmet are symmetrical. Keep the symmetry alive. But I have to question about this whole fan-friendly thing. If it was truly fan-friendly, it wouldn't be on a Friday.
There's the guy who's down in Bradenton and can't.
Seriously, I actually was talking to a couple of people, and they're like, have they ever done it on, not on a Saturday before? This is actually the first spring game not on a Saturday. I would love to have seen a Saturday evening spring game. That would have been the best move for bringing people in. There's plenty of, as we know, Broward County has the third highest amount of UCF alum outside of Orange and Seminole. Guess what? They're 3 hours away. So, they'd have to leave work early just to make the game. Like, I can't make the game. Kyle's going to be there covering. Obviously, Jeff is the voice of the Bounce House. But, yeah, I can't make it there. And the best part of all is there's no stream. So those poor people who can't go can't even watch the game.
It's funny you mentioned the stream because that's been an ongoing debate for years.
Nothing new.
So I know that you would like to see it streamed so that other people can, so that
I know why
fans
they
can
don't.
see it. But there is a good reason why they don't. Number one, you want to get people in the stadium first, right? And number two,
playbook.
Yeah, you don't want anyone getting some snips out of that, right?
But then again, all you guys talk about is, they're just running vanilla playbooks. They're not going to run anything. So who gives a damn?
Plays out of the playbook.
That's the other side of the debate.
Because even the vanilla stuff is designed to work.
There is a workaround here, though. Where as we're seeing with the yard sale on Saturday being run by the Kingdom, there's an opportunity here that you can actually create an option for ambassador members of the Kingdom, which is a certain level of member of the NIL collective, to be able to receive a stream within their internal social media network, which they do have. There's opportunity there. Obviously, the Kingdom's still very new. Maybe that's something to build towards the future. But I see opportunity there where you can find a way where you can give fans what they want, the ones who can't be there, but still have a degree of protection against putting your playbook out in the open.
Night fans need love too, but they got to pay.
And they do pay.
I'm interested. Well, let me go back to my original question. Give me an attendance number, Kyle.
I'm gonna go with 3,000. What do you think, Kyle?
I would have said 5.
Wait, did you say 3,000?
That usually it's not a huge number.
No, I know, but 3,000?
Why not?
I was thinking 10.
Yeah.
No. I don't even think Scott Frost got 10 in his first spring game.
Yeah. Well.
No, it's not going to be that much. It's just going to be the hardcore fans who hang out. But I don't think it's going to be nearly as much, especially because it's on a Friday night and those out-of-towners won't make the drive.
Right.
I should say, many of the out-of-towners can't make the drive.
You keep focusing on the out-of-towners, Drew. They aren't. I think they're trying to get students in the building, right? So
yeah, that's the other thing.
Well, Friday night, Saturday night, either way, students are going to go party.
Well, right, but at least on Friday night, if they got classes, that's just a jaunt over is the punchline. And listen, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I believe that's the thought process, right? So, and for me, I don't know that I got 10, but I would say if I were going to put a range on it, it would be 5 to 10. 3 is a touch pessimistic.
I'll take the 3 to 5 range. You can take the 5 to 10 range.
Okay.
You're such a pessimist, Drew. Gosh, have a little faith.
Yeah, I'm so negative.
For once in your life, God.
Find some bacon. Lighten up. Jesus.
Man, I know, right?
Bacon. hey, in fairness, it is Passover. I can't eat real food for another couple days, so this is always a hell week for me.
Oh, so no wonder he's betting the numbers so low. He's cranky. Anyway.
Yeah, no wonder. Yeah,
I at least can eat French fries. I can do that.
Let's get him out of here because it's not going so good for Drew over here. Thoughts and prayers to Drew.
I need a cheeseburger. I want a cheeseburger. I can't eat it.
All right, we're gonna get out of here before we get canceled once again. When we return, we'll talk softball and catch you up on some of the other sports that are going on around, and a little UCF versus USF UCF versus UCF matchup in the XFL over this past weekend, which we will recap for you as well. This is the Night Shift Podcast. Stick around. We're back in a flash. We're back on the show. Jeff, Bryson, and Nick now joining you to wrap up the week in UCF sports. So we talked about, obviously, baseball and softball earlier in the show. I wanted to jump over to tennis real quick here, Bryson. Women's tennis at 8 and 9, and they've been kind of they were struggling there for a little bit, but righted the ship in Daytona against Bethune on Friday, and they have 2 matches left in the regular season against South Florida and SMU. What is the state of play right now for women's tennis? Because they're 6-4 at home this year, and these last 2 matches are at home. You know, they could get themselves back, you know, above 500 at 10 and 9 if they win these last 2, and those are against ranked opponents. And then I think that gives you a nice little springboard heading into the American Championships, which they are hosting on April 19th through the 23rd.
Well, women's tennis has kind of been going through a rough patch in the last couple of weeks. They've had Marie Mattel and Stephanie Webb exit matches because of retirement, which could potentially mean injury. We don't know. That's unconfirmed. But they did not
retiring as in like quitting the sport, like just retired as in like they couldn't play anymore in that particular game.
Right. Sorry, that's tennis terminology meaning for you there.
For those who are not tennis nicks like Eric is. So
they originally had a matchup scheduled with Tulane, but that was canceled because there was, quote, not enough student athletes for that. So they created that matchup with Bethune-Cookman that happened. But because of limited student athletes there, it was only 4 singles matches that got played. Normally, you play 3 doubles matches and 6 singles matches. So the 4-0 is 4 singles matches. Marie Mattel did play that, so she got to play there. But Stephanie Webb did not. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on as they go to play South Florida and SMU. The ITA rankings for them also came out this morning, and the team is currently coming in at number 39. So, and they will be and over this weekend, they'll be playing number 47 SMU and number 59 USF. So while I think injuries could potentially have just kind of played a role and thrown them off a little bit, especially with the road trip they had against ranked teams like Georgia Tech and Clemson, I think having this last matchup to get yourself ready for an AAC championship, that's at home, by the way, which really helps you, is definitely going to be very key in kind of determining what expectations we could see from this women's tennis team. But if they're going to need a rebound, and they're going to need to do it quick.
So you think they need to play themselves into the NCAA tournament? That's what you're thinking right now.
Well, I think they do have an okay resume, but because they just played a very tough schedule. So I think playing themselves in would certainly help them, because I wouldn't want to leave it up to chance, basically. But they managed to play themselves in last year pretty well. Maybe certainly their schedule is helping them, because even though they're below 500, they're in the top 40. Mm-hmm. So I think winning these games against USF and SMU will help them, and then winning the AAC championship would certainly be very good, especially since it's at home. I think striking while the iron is hot there would be the most preferable action.
Well, I mean, I think you're right. Like you never want to leave that kind of stuff to chance. Obviously, I mean, if you're the coaching staff, certainly you want to be like, okay, let's see if we can win this thing, and then we're not worried about any of that stuff. I want to ask about the men's team too, because they're also below 500, but they have a little bit more. They have a tougher path ahead of them right now. They're 49th in the ITAs. Now they have 2 matches left as well against UAB in Alabama on Wednesday the 12th, and they're home for Tulsa also to finish out the season. Tulsa's ranked number 59 in the country on Sunday. Now, they're coming off of 2 consecutive wins this week in conference play at home against Tulane. Tulane's ranked 43, and they beat them 4-0. And then they went to Tampa and beat number 53 South Florida 4-3. And I thought that was a huge win for them. Like they really needed those 2. We thought, Bryson, that, those 3 ranked matches in a row that they had at Memphis, home for Tulane, at South Florida, they really needed to get something going in those 3. And with those last 2 wins, I think they did. Now, they lost to Memphis 9 days ago in Tennessee, but to beat Tulane in South Florida, I think that was a big boost for them. So now what about them with 2 matches left to go in the regular season? Their conference tournament is coming up, again, hosting 21st through the 23rd. So how do you feel about their chances now going forward in these final 2 matches, about if they can play themselves in, or do you think they'll have to win the tournament as well?
I've said this since the beginning of the season. I did not really have high expectations for this men's tennis team. Not because I don't think they're not talented. I think they are. The problem is that they are swathed with inexperience, where most of the players we've seen, aside from Bogdan Pavel and Leighton Cronje, were freshmen, true freshmen. So these are people that really needed to learn the system as they went. And as we've been seeing, because while they have had losses against a very tough schedule that included number 4 Ohio State twice and number 2 Texas, so playing against them as a true freshman, I mean, good luck to you there. But they've also have managed to pick up wins against number 39 Tulane, number 55 SMU, number 60 Arkansas, and number 62 FAU. So the quality of the wins that they have, even though they're below 500 right now, are really good. And I think the fact that they have those wins are indicative of the talent that they have on that roster, especially with Yassine Gleamy. But this UAB matchup was actually just added to the schedule. Just like with women's tennis, they've added another matchup, and this one's on the road, which is very intriguing to me. I think, and this is why I think this is the case, is because on the road, this team has not been particularly good on the road this year at 3-6. So I think having this matchup added here gives you nice practice on the road, because at home they've been doing pretty well. They've been doing pretty well at home. The fact, again, like I said with the women's tennis team, the AAC championships being here in Orlando at the USTA National Campus is, I think, a very big advantage for them, because they've been doing really well with that. The other thing that I think is going to be very important, keep an eye on that noon matchup on Sunday, April 16th with Tulsa. I think this is going to be a very important matchup, because it's a big gauge at how this team has grown since the beginning of the dual match season, because they played Tulsa for the ITA kickoff weekend back on January 29th and lost 4-1. So their performance against Tulsa now at home, where they've done better, I think it's going to be indicative of, 1, home court advantage, and 2, how much this team has grown since the beginning of this season. Bogdan Pavel has been a great leader. This is going to be a last hurrah for him. Leighton Cronje, from what I've seen, I believe he has 1 year left, so that can be good leadership going forward into the Big 12 with this large amount of underclassmen that this team has. But through the course of this year, we've seen that this underclassmen are talented. And so honestly, if we see them perform just well at this AAC tournament, I am perfectly fine at the direction of this program is going, even if we don't make the NCAAs, because again, it's a team full of true freshmen. Now, if we make the NCAAs or win the AAC tournament and make the NCAAs, that would be a huge accomplishment for John Roddick in the recruiting perspective.
All right, so as tennis heads down the stretch, we'll be keeping an eye on them. Who else are we keeping an eye on? Track and field. Now, they dropped down to 14th in the latest D1 National Ratings Index. Renaya Jones finished 4th in the 100-meter hurdles at their most recent event, which was the Hurricane Alumni Invitational at the University of Miami. UCF Track and Field right now, in the midst of the outdoor season, they will go to the Tom Jones Invitational. They didn't have that many people competing down at Miami, but that's okay. They're going to the Tom Jones Invitational at Gainesville, their second event in Gainesville on the 14th and the 15th. And then after that, it's Georgia Tech, LSU, UNF, and then the American Championships middle of May. So we're already 1 month away from the postseason in track and field. All right,
Jeff, that was Taylor Harris.
It was Taylor Harris. Okay, my bad. So
Taylor Harris had a 13.26 time, and then Natalia Madison managed to elevate herself to second all time in heptathlon, beating out Jamie Pugh by 1 point in the heptathlon to take silver. So
got it. Good call. Good call. Thank you, Bryson. Over to football, and I want to get Nick in here because Nick, we had our we're in the spring football equinox now. Okay, the XFL season is coming down to an end. We had a matchup of two UCF players on the field. The last two guys remaining for UCF in the XFL this past weekend, and the USFL is getting ready to start this coming weekend with 5 UCF players on USFL rosters. I want to start in the XFL with the Orlando Guardians and the Arlington Renegades. Arlington defeating Orlando by 2, 18-16. In a matchup of two former teammates at UCF, actually. Terrence Plummer for Orlando and Rennell Hall for Arlington. Of course, remember Adrian Killens was on Arlington, but he was let go. Rennell Hall, interestingly enough, now their kick returner, taking over for another former UCF Knight. And Hall's actually been making a few waves as a receiver as well for Arlington. A bummer for Orlando because they had that big win over DC that kept them alive for at least one more week in the playoff race, but they've been eliminated with the loss to Arlington. But how did Terrence perform? How did Rennell perform in this matchup of two UCF Knights in Orlando? Oh, you're silenced, Nick. Sorry. Don't know why.
Yeah, so covering Terrence throughout the whole year, he's been very consistent. Like, if you look at his stats from every game, it's almost the same thing. He's usually one of the top guys in tackles. That's why he leads the entire team in tackles, and he's currently 9th in the league. He had 6 tackles this time, 3 solo and 3 assisted. So, pretty solid. And then Rennell, he had 1 reception for 16 yards, as well as 2 kickoff returns for a total of 46 yards. I don't know. If you look at their stats for kick returners, the Renegades, they switched that position out a lot, but right. He's starting to get a little more reps. This keeps him alive in the playoffs. Obviously, DC clinched the playoff spot this week but that second spot is still open. If they make it, I wouldn't be shocked if he became their full-time guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to see how, Rennell is kind of selling, because he was injured earlier in the year, right?
Yeah, he was injured this is his 4th game, 3rd one starting. So he was injured for the first 4 weeks, and he's been, playing the rest. Clearly they liked him because, unfortunately Jordan McRae, he was on injured reserve with the Brahmas all year, and eventually they just decided to cut him. But the fact that they kept him shows that they saw something in him, and I think he's been rewarding them for that. He's not in terms of wide receiver stats, it's not the flashiest, but he's making a impact, and I think he could get better as the season goes on.
All right. 2 more weeks to go in the XFL season, and then it's championship weekend, and then they have a week off, and then the XFL championship game set for mid-May in the Alamo Dome in San Antonio. Speaking of leagues that are hosting championships in the spring, the USFL is back for year number 2. First football league to have its second season other than the NFL since in I think it was 20 years I saw it. So the USFL is back. The Tampa Bay Bandits are not. They've been shuffled into the Memphis Showboats, which is another old USFL.
That whole thing is weird. Like, they say they'll bring them back. From what I can tell, they're kind of doing like that weird Baltimore Raven, Cleveland Brown thing where it's like, we're not counting this as part of our history, but it's like the same team, personnel and everything. And if they bring the team back, that first season was part of it. It's like that weird thing where it's like, in reality, like, you just changed your name. That's all you did.
Right. But, I mean, the XFL kind of did that with the Guardians, right? Like, they used to be the New York Guardians, now the Orlando Guardians.
But that feels like a little more natural because there's like such a time difference between the 2 seasons. It's like, we've said this, the XFL this year is basically a 3rd league and not a continuation of the 2nd one, even though it really was. Mm-hmm. But this one's even weirder.
Well, either way, We've got some UCF guys on USFL rosters that we're going to be keeping an eye on this spring. The most prominent of which, Marlon Williams, who is once again back with the Birmingham Stallions. They are the defending champions. Last year, he had 32 catches for 472 yards, 4 touchdowns. He was a key. I thought he was a really key player for Birmingham, especially down the stretch. You mentioned Jordan McCray. He was also on the Stallions. He's not, but another UCF offensive lineman is.
Yep, Cole Schneider. He's going to be making his pro debut. Obviously, he got signed by the Packers after he went undrafted, but they cut him in training camp, and now he's joining these teams. I would assume if he's not a starter, then we'll still see him in a lot of snaps. So I expect a lot out of him. Although, isn't it kind of ironic that 2 UCF guys are going to be coached by a former USF head coach?
Yeah, Skip Holtz.
Yeah,
Skip Holtz. Yeah, that's right. Well, it worked out for Marlon last year.
Yeah,
I mean, let's be real. I mean, he was great.
Yeah.
Couple other guys with the New Orleans Breakers too. Neville Clark is back with New Orleans, and Miss Tatum joins him. What's your outlook on those 2 guys?
Neville had a pretty solid season with them last year. He was injured at some point, I believe. I don't remember for which portion, but he did miss a couple of games. But he still did pretty well overall in there. So he had interception, a couple of tackles. If he stays healthy, I expect his stats to go up. And then for Tatum, I'm really excited. Just in terms of like story, I'm happy for him. It's kind of similar to Cole Schneider, but like with an extra chapter. He went undrafted same year, got signed by the Jaguars, got cut before training camp, but then he was drafted by the San Antonio Brahmas, and then they cut him. So he's had to wait extra long to get a chance to make his pro debut. And you know what? I'm happy for him, and I hope he does well.
Yeah. And last but not least, another familiar name, and this is from the Gus Malzahn era of UCF.
Yep.
Big Cat Bryant is making his pro debut, or pro return, I should say. Obviously, got a cup of coffee in the NFL, but he's trying to work his way back in. He's with the Memphis Showboats, which is the team that ostensibly replaced the Tampa Bay Bandits. What are the odds on seeing Big Cat making some waves here?
I would think he would, because you did mention he had a cup of coffee in the NFL. Unlike his 2 other teammates that we just talked about, he was cut by the Cowboys who signed him, but then he spent a good time on the Dolphins practice squad. So he does have somewhat of an NFL experience. He's still like a younger guy. I'd assume they'd use him a lot. I have seen this. Like, I was just going through Instagram one day, and I follow him on there, and he was posting. He was like one of their guys that they were using in media day, specifically like those hype videos they show where they like try to show their best players, try to get the crowd ready. He was part of that. So clearly, I think that they expect a lot out of him. And again, I'm rooting for him, A, because he's got the greatest name in sports, and B, he was like, I remember watching him. He was one of our best players that year. First team All ACC. He was constantly put pressure on the quarterback. So he could have a breakout year. I really do believe that.
Yeah. We've seen, if anything is true from what we saw in the XFL, these outside pass rushers, I think, have a real advantage, in terms of, if you can just use your athleticism to get around the corner. Relatively inexperienced quarterbacks have a hard time getting the ball out quickly. A guy like Big Cat could cause some real havoc. The USFL this year, remember last year, one other note, they played their entire season in Birmingham. This year, they're splitting it amongst 4 different venues. The Michigan Panthers and Philadelphia Stars will be playing in Detroit. New Jersey Generals and Pittsburgh Maulers in Canton, Ohio, at the home of the Hall of Fame. Birmingham and New Orleans will be in Birmingham, and then Memphis and Houston will be at the Liberty Bowl. So, and that season gets underway this coming weekend, April 15th. Fox, FS1, NBC, USA will be covering the USFL as they enter, as USFL 2.0 enters year number 2. So this will be a pretty interesting moment here for the USFL to see, what will this league look like in year number 2? Will the product be? I thought the product was pretty polished. As it got toward the end of last year, I think it'll be even more so this year, as we've seen with the XFL. I thought the on-field product really improved over the course of the season. All right, that's going to do it for us. We got to get going here on the Night Shift podcast. Thanks again to all of you who are listening. You can follow all of our latest written content on blackandgoldbanneret.com, SB Nation's home for UCF. Follow me individually at Jeff_Sharon on Twitter. You can follow Bryson at It's Bryson Turner, Nick at Nick Porcelli 2, Eric at Eric Lopez Elo. You can follow Kyle at the SOTG for the student of the game, and of course Drew at Statboy Drew. Follow all of us for your latest in UCF sports. I will see you guys at the spring game on Friday night, 7:30. Knights versus Nauts. I think it's going to be fun. Take a little bit of the edge off as we head into the summer and get ready for the 2023 football season. And we are now counting down the weeks until the big transition, UCF to the Big 12. And we're going to have a lot of content for you coming up over the next several weeks on the site as we get ready for the biggest move in the history of UCF athletics. So for all of us here at the Night Shift podcast, I am Jeff Sharon saying thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week. Until then, enjoy the spring game.